Welcome to the LahSET podcast. I am Lauren Hale, a nurse and the founder of LahSET. LahSET is a company focused on helping people through their difficult healthcare journeys. We carry the burden of navigating the healthcare system so that you can focus on healing. LahSET podcast was started to get people's healthcare stories and experiences out to make an impact for others who might be going through a similar journey. We hear from both patients and healthcare professionals. Hey everybody, welcome to the LahSET podcast. I have a special guest here. Her name is Leanne. We are going to be talking about IVF today. How are you, Leanne?
Good. How are you, Lauren?
I'm doing good. Thanks
Good.
so much for joining us. I think first off, I'll just have you tell everyone a little bit about yourself. How you grew up, if you had any like health concerns or anything like that, and
Yeah,
what you're up to right now.
sure. So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I currently live in Gahanna, Ohio. And so pretty much that I now currently what I do is I'm a teacher. I work with preschool age kiddos and I work with kids with autism. And so this is kind of and I love my work. I love my job. I love where we live right now. And obviously, I'm currently pregnant. And health concerns growing up, really, I didn't find out until my mid 20s. I had PCOS, and that kind of brought me to where I am now today because it was a bit of a journey knowing that I had that before we started IVF. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I have two kitties and a baby on the way. I am 30 weeks today, and my husband's upstairs. He's about to go to the gym actually. And
Oh, okay.
then he works out every day. He's ridiculous.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, so other than that, my family is also here too. They live in Columbus. And yeah, so I don't know anything
Very
exciting about
nice.
me. But
Yeah. When
yeah,
did you
born and
meet?
raised.
Okay. When
Sorry.
did you meet your husband and when did you get married?
So we actually met in 2014, and
Okay.
it's kind of funny story. I was the designated driver for a friend for her 21st birthday, and I was a little older. I was about 24, almost 25 then. And
Okay.
so I was not planning on doing any drinking, but it's actually kind of a funny story because a lot of people think that when I say I met my husband at a bar, it was not like that. Um, but he
Yes.
was there and he actually just got off work, and him and his roommate, they lived in a house just literally a couple minutes down the road. They would go there after work on the weekends and just have a couple of drinks and then go home. And so all the girls I was with were all single, and they were just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you should go talk to him." And like this guy, they're like literally like it's a small little bar in Reynoldsburg.
Okay.
And if any of you know Reynoldsburg area, and the bar is like very tiny. I don't even think it's there anymore actually. Um, and all these girls already had significant others and their boyfriends or whatever. And so I was like just, there and the only single one at the time, and they're just picking out random people like, "Oh, that person's cute, that one's cute." And I was like, "Guys,
Right.
that's not my vibe. I don't pick up guys in a bar." And
Right.
so I'm like, especially like, imagine me like telling my mom, "Oh, how'd you meet?" "Oh, this guy at the bar." I mean, my mom
Yeah.
would be like, "No," but no, she was obviously
That's funny.
accepting of it later on. But so I
Yes.
met him at a bar. He wasn't drunk or anything. I wasn't, obviously, because I was the driver for everyone. And
Yeah.
so basically, they're like forcing me. I went over there, started talking to him. He's less outgoing than I am. And I
Hmm.
just kind of break the ice by insulting his beer choice. And I told him that it was basically crap beer. And he's like, "Really? What would you suggest?" And I gave him a suggestion. And his roommate
Yeah.
thought it was funny. And then that was pretty much it. And we kind of hit it off when we started talking, and we continued talking. So I drove the girls to another place and I drove them home nearby. And then they were like, he's like, "Oh, I wouldn't mind, talking to you more." So me and his roommate actually went to an IHOP nearby. And we
That's
talked, and then we
funny.
went back to his house, and we talked more. Nothing
Oh my
happened.
gosh.
And it was
Yeah.
late into the night, and then we just talked. That's all we did. And then the next day, I actually had my soon-to-be sister-in-law at the time, her shower, and then she asked, what were you last? What did you last night? I told her everything, but then I got a text from him, and he was like, "Hey, if you want a real date, like on Monday, take you to." He's like, "I work a third shift." He works well, he still works at Abercrombie, but he was
Yeah.
working third shift at Abercrombie at the time. He's like, "Do you want to get breakfast?" I'm like, "On a Monday? Yeah, sure. That's our first date." And so
Aw.
we met up and we talked for long again
Yeah.
and continued. And then we went on more serious dates. And then it was actually when I met him at the end of January. And then February came, we officially started dating. And it was near Valentine's Day. And then we went and had like more dates. And it was really fun. And so then we hit it off. And that was in 2014, well, now actually going on 11 years this coming month.
Oh my
And
gosh, I
yeah, that's
can't
pretty much
believe
it.
that.
11 years. Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah. And then
feels
we
like
got, yeah.
2014 was just a
Yeah.
couple years ago, and it
I
wasn't.
know. And then we got married in 2022. And we waited for so long. We're almost like going on 8 years of being together, but we had decided, both of us, that we wanted to pay some things off and just not do a lot of things. We did everything backwards, obviously, but then,
Right.
but yeah, but hey, it's great. We have a condo and baby on the way and love our life. So.
That is very awesome. And yeah, I didn't know, I guess I knew you were like in the Columbus area because that's where I lived for a while, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know you lived in Gahanna. That's exactly where me and my husband lived too, was Gahanna,
Oh
and I
yeah, that's
love
right. I
that
forgot
area.
about
It's
that.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a
Very
great
cool.
area. Yeah,
Yeah.
we actually lived in Westerville, New Albany. Well, we had an apartment. We've been there for
Yeah.
years. We decided, like, Gahanna's right down the road. We wanted to have our own place, so now we do. So,
Yes. Well, that's
yeah.
amazing. So, you guys got married, I guess it'd be like 2 to 3 years ago. So, when did you guys
November
start?
2022.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So, you guys just had an anniversary.
Yeah.
When did you guys start trying to get pregnant?
Um, so we started, let's see here. So after we got married, we obviously were just trying like the natural route, and that was in
Right.
2022. And then come trying to think, it was that spring, probably April, May, I started talking to my gynecologist, knowing that we would have possible troubles because of my background with PCOS. And then
Mhm.
she then told me about a specialist in the area. And so then after that, basically she was saying that, it could take time. I would start contacting him now. So I did. That was May, June. And
Yeah.
then we started by, I would say, August, we started doing time cycle. So they
Okay.
basically put you on Clomid, and then you do everything, everything time wise. And you try
Okay.
during this like set period. And that's what we did. We did one round, failed. We started a second round, and then I asked my husband my husband at that
Yeah.
time, I said, "Hey, I think you should get tested too, just in case." I know my gynecologist said, "Oh, it's 1 in 10 chances, not not as likely, but it could be." And so he got tested too,
Right.
right as we were starting our second round of time cycle with the Clomid, and
Okay.
found out that's when we found out that it was actually him that had the lower sperm count. And so we then, moving forward from that, we decided that because we knew that he had that, we wanted to at least try some other things through our specialist. He said, even though it's low, how about you see a urologist? He started seeing a urologist. And urologist actually suggested this injection. It's called HCG, I think, believe, and it's like a very strong um, injection that basically supposed to increase your sperm count.
Okay.
And it's like, it kind of balances your testosterone, supposed to balance your testosterone. also, I think, increase your estrogen, I believe, too. But it's very strong, very expensive medicine. And
Yeah.
when we
Is that a
found out,
pill or an injection
no,
or
it's
what
an
was that?
injection. So he would do it
Okay.
either in his leg or
Gotcha.
in his arm.
Okay.
And so then he found out that it was, yeah, so he did the first round, and this, like, it was like fall through December. And then he did blood work, and then he basically was like, oh, wow, it's, test came back. It didn't, it didn't work. And so we did another
Yeah.
round. And then
Mm-hmm.
like, let's try one more round. Then he did second round. It didn't work. And unfortunately, it was failed both times. And actually, and when he did those tests, it not only did not meet, like, even for him to be able to, for us to even do IUI, because that's a less expensive version than IVF, and
Mm-hmm.
found out that it didn't just not help him, but it decreased his sperm count instead of increased his sperm count.
Oh my
So, which
gosh.
was, it
And
was
you
already
said that was
low.
super expensive, right?
Yes,
How
yeah.
expensive was each treatment?
I want to say, oh, it was like, I think it was two grand, yeah, $2,000 a round. So it was
Oh,
about
wow.
to a
Okay.
total of $4,000 that we had spent on those two rounds. So then the
Jeez.
doctor, the urologist, said that, hey, how about we try a natural method of just, he was already eating healthy for the most part, eating healthy, losing weight, exercising, which he was already getting back into, and which he kind of gotten away from. And he also had gained a little bit of weight in the last, like, couple years before that. But so he did all those things, which actually did help increase his sperm count.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
but it wasn't enough even for IUI. Like, he had to have, like, I think 10 million healthy sperm, or like sperm count, in order for it to be, like,
Yeah.
valuable for even for IUI.
And can
So
you explain too? I know you and I talked a little bit about
yeah,
this before this recording. So, what is IUI, if you could explain that?
and I should probably look this up. It's in vitro uterine. The abbreviation I'm gonna mess up. So basically,
Yeah,
instead
that's
of, so
okay.
IVF is the, there's more, it's more invasive. So
Mm-hmm.
IUI, they basically get you to the point where you're fertile, and they inject the sperm, and then basically let things naturally happen, um,
Mm-hmm.
with a healthy sperm, and basically hoping that you will, get pregnant. And then
Mm-hmm.
with IVF, it's a lot more invasive. And basically, they do first, you're on the medication, and you then do the embryo or the egg retrieval. And after the egg retrieval, you do the embryo transfer. But it's like a longer process than that. It sounds like very short, but it's not. So it's a whole
Right.
process of, like, you do this medicine, you do injections, and then you do the egg retrieval, which is the most invasive part. You're put under, and
Okay.
then you're on more medicine afterwards. Well, actually, I take that back. So you have to then, they want you to want to be naturally start, but it's hard because it's like you're a sitting duck, because especially with my case, I had irregular periods. So it was like, okay, I have to
Mm-hmm.
naturally start this and that. So they're kind of waiting for me to start my period, and then they were going to start the process of the progesterone and all the medication and injections for me to be ready for the embryo transfer. Um,
Okay.
so basically, it's kind of like a step by step. So first, they have to do the egg retrieval, which takes time because you have to do all these multiple steps before that. And then once they do that, they look for your valuable eggs. And a lot of people usually do the testing on the eggs, and to see which ones are normal versus abnormal. And they do a genetic test on it, on all the eggs that you have, and just to see, and they have to be all normal in order for them to do the embryo transfer. They said it literally has to be a near
Right.
perfect procedure, basically. So then
Right.
after that, you like there's a sitting waiting period, and then before IVF, and you just kind of wait to start your period, and then they start you on the medicine, the progesterone, and then you do all these things to get ready basically for them to implant. And then after the
Okay.
implantation, then you're just waiting to see, oh, am I pregnant? Like it's about almost 2 weeks, like 10 days or whatever later.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so that's pretty much it. But yeah, it's kind of like it sounds like sort of it's from the basically I started in like end of May, beginning of June. And then I did the egg retrieval end of June. And then July, waiting for me to start. And then I didn't do the embryo transfer until end of July into almost August. And then we found out in early August that we were pregnant.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Yeah, that's
yeah,
amazing. And just
yeah.
to backtrack a little bit with the
Mhm.
PCOS, so when were you diagnosed with PCOS? And then also, how
Yeah.
did you know how that would affect you getting pregnant? Like, what information did they give you about that?
Um, they didn't say it was like impossible for me to get pregnant, but
Hmm.
when I think I was around 24, I found out that I had PCOS. But actually, I'll explain also, there's actually something I did find out about my PCOS versus, I actually have PCO instead of PCOS. I don't
Oh,
have all
okay.
the side effects or symptoms. I don't fully understand it, but two doctors actually told me that I don't actually have all the things that go along with PCOS. Because my mom had it, then I had it. So it's more
Okay.
genetics, but there's a lot more things like, hair growth. There's other things that maybe other symptoms that other people that have PCOS that make it
Right.
harder struggle, and higher like testosterone levels and things like that, and make it harder for them to get pregnant. But I did find out I had cysts on my ovaries when I was about 24,
Okay.
and finding this out, I kind of figured just because my mom had it and it was inevitable in some essence. And so once I found out that I had PCOS, my gynecologist at the time had said, yeah, it's a good idea that you probably start at this point or age because it might be harder for you. Because it's not impossible, because there's a lot of people that get pregnant with PCOS,
Hmm.
but having cysts on your ovaries and just having that timing, and like just being able to be like, your uterine line being thick, this and that. I learned a lot of these things doing when we were doing the process for IVF, but like there's
Okay.
so many things that you don't think about, like that just could make it more difficult to get pregnant with PCOS. But the doctor did say, when doing my egg retrieval, said that he said, like, you're a perfect candidate, honestly, for IVF, because he's like, you have so many eggs, which is also common with PCOS, because if you don't have a period frequently, you don't release eggs. So I had a lot of eggs, and so I had a
Hmm.
lot to really, offer for this procedure. So that was the encouraging thing about it. But
Yeah.
PCOS can be discouraging, but also the encouraging thing is the fact that they these days, there's a lot of things that they can do to help you with it. And
Right.
like even my other friend, she has PCOS, and she's now expecting twins in a week. And but she did the
Oh.
time cycle, she did all those things, and she had the same thing, but they got pregnant pretty fast. But they did start on like the time cycle and that process, and found out, like, it is, yeah, it can be discouraging, can be a little harder, but what if you see, the right doctors or the right specialists for it, like it's a lot more manageable and a lot more achievable these days, it feels like, than maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. So
Right. Yeah. And the cyst that they found on your ovaries, that was found by ultrasound.
yeah, so it was a gynecologist I was seeing at the time, and just to clarify, because I had knew, because my mom had it. Sorry, my cat's trying to get in here. Um,
It's okay.
but so I knew because my mom had it. I was like, I want to get checked, because I had noticed the irregularity of my periods had increased more than usual.
Okay.
Um, so
And
like
by
through my
irregular, do you mean there's like longer periods in time between your periods and that's why you
so
hold on to
sometimes
those eggs?
yeah. So
Okay.
sometimes I wouldn't have a period for 3 to 6 months. And when I was younger, it was more
Jeez.
it'd be more frequent. But I
Yeah.
noticed as I got older, it seemed to kind of increase. I don't know if it could have been stress level, could have been anything that could have contributed to it. But yeah, so the doctor said that I had cysts on my ovaries and like they look like little craters, little dark spots on your ovaries.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was it was like it was discouraging, but also I'm like, oh, I kind of knew that that would happen, most likely
Mhm.
because of being like my mom had it, but I was kind of hoping that I skipped it.
Yes, that would have been nice,
But yeah,
huh?
yeah. But at the time, like she's like, it's manageable, and it's a lot of women do have PCOS these days. Actually, a lot more. Like I can list at least 5 to 6 people in my brain that I know that have it, and
Wow. Yeah.
even though like if you do have it and it can be discouraging, but at the same time, like I said, there's a lot more treatment, a lot more things these days where it is manageable, and you can be able to get pregnant even if you have it. So
Okay. Well, good. Did you feel like your OBGYN was helpful in
mhm,
getting you to like a fertility specialist?
yeah.
And then whenever they sent you there, what kind of emotions did you have? Were you, nervous or concerned or how were you feeling?
I think it was like it's a whole new breed, honestly, when you go there, because seeing
Yeah.
your OB in or not your OB, I mean your gynecologist, sorry. When you see your gynecologist, it's like, it's routine. They see you. But when you see a specialist, it's like they run more tests, they ask more questions. They're very,
Hmm.
um, they are more invested, obviously, because they're wanting to get you to a point, and that is to get pregnant. And obviously, yes, specialists cost more money, and obviously a lot more time and a lot more money. But if you know that you struggled to get pregnant for a while, or even if you know that you didn't get, even if it's not in the length of time, even if it's you're older and you're like, well, I
Hmm.
might have missed my window to get pregnant. They really, really, really do try to help you to get to that point, because I mean that's their mission, that's their goal, that's why they're there. So that's kind of the difference between a gynecologist is like she's there to check on you, there to be there for you and like help you get, surface kind of pregnancy. But when it comes to something that's more invasive or something
Hmm.
that might need more like attention or time,
Hmm.
a specialist I feel like is very, um, I would say, beneficial than just like waiting to see if you can. Not like my friend, she did just go to her gynecologist and just did what those like the basics of what you would
Oh,
do
okay.
maybe to get. But seeing a specialist can also have some other benefactors. So like, knowing that if you go to a specialist, they might do more like they did a really intense genetic test versus some places only check 250 things and they checked for 500 things.
Oh,
So
wow.
sometimes it's like kind of worth it going to a specialist just because they find things that maybe like the gynecologist may not find, just
Right.
because that's what they specialize in, and theirs is
Yeah.
obviously more detailed. So
Do they do that genetic testing on both you and your husband or just you in the
both,
beginning?
yeah,
Okay.
in the beginning, both. He did it. No, he did do it through where we went. I thought he did it through the urologist, but um, he had said that we should both. I had already gotten mine done way, way prior to all of this. But once Chris started, that's my husband, once he started the process of the injections in between, he did also the genetic test, which it worked out really well because there were no red flags for both of us, which is like the encouragement we need because it was like, we got to break even with something and positive because everything else was
Yeah.
so negative that we had heard about getting pregnant. But
Right.
he had found out that he had nothing come back on his genetic test No red flags. I had no red flags. And
That's
our
awesome.
doctor said, the specialist said that, like, that's a rarity when you're trying to get pregnant. We do genetic tests on both, both people, that there would be no red flags, because that can most likely it's always at least one person in the relationship that usually has something.
Right.
But both of us didn't, which made it, I was like, okay, well, at least that's one less thing we have to worry about when getting pregnant,
Yes.
because it can actually be another roadblock when you get the genetic test. And knowing that when you get that genetic test, there could be, out of the 500 things, something,
Mm-hmm.
and like most likely, like, it's not untreatable, it's treatable most part for what you have, unless it's like something more serious. But
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, that's one less thing we had to worry about in the process of getting
That's
pregnant.
good.
So yeah.
Yeah. So from there, can you kind of go through the steps you had to go through? I know you kind of like broadly mentioned it, but just to get that embryo implanted, can you go through
Yeah.
that?
So basically, it's like, I'm almost blanking out now because it feels like it was so long ago. So they
Yeah.
give you different types of medications to take. Could be once or twice a day. I'm honestly blanking out. But the biggest thing was like the injections. So the injections for the embryo transfer was progesterone, and I did take another medication that I can't remember the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically prepares your uterus, prepares your body for implantation. And
Okay.
in the process of that, I had found oh yeah, and then they also, before even you do implantation, like I told you, the embryo basically has to be near perfect, because they worry about miscarriage. And then also the
Mm-hmm.
fact that your house where your baby is going to be living for the next 9 months, your uterus has to be near perfect. No cysts, no anything like that. And if there is, it's manageable. They'll take it off. But if they do find anything in your uterus, they won't move forward with the procedure. Thankfully, I have not any children, so my uterus looked really good. They didn't find any cysts. They didn't find anything that could prohibit it. I was worried about fallopian tubes being clogged, but because
Yeah.
some women go through that they usually find that out early on before going through the procedure. But I was like, okay, they look for that. They look for different things they may have to
Right.
do to flush it. But so basically, they check your uterus while you're on the medication, check your uterus, and then shortly after you do all that, then you go in for the embryo transfer. And then even after that, once they do the transfer, you are actually not done with the progesterone. Um, I was done
Oh,
with one of
okay.
the medications not long after that, but then I'm on progesterone for then the next 10 weeks after that. So
Okay.
my loving husband, because it's a little harder. So for the egg or the embryo transfer, you have to do an injection in your backside.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's a little harder to do by yourself. But when I did the egg retrieval, I did injections in my stomach, which if I needed to do it by myself, I would just do it. If I needed help, I would ask. But the when I did the progesterone for after the before and after the embryo transfer, I had my husband give me injections for 10 weeks. Um, he was so sweet about it, and it was definitely not.
That's
It
awesome.
was it was not easy too. I will say that it's not,
Yeah.
because over time I would say your buttocks area becomes very numb, and you have like an area, like a window of where you're supposed to do the injections, and you kind of do it like in a counterclockwise way, and
Okay.
you try to find a spot that hasn't been injected, and you just kind of rotate it, because there have been times when we would go through the injections and realize that, oh, we already did that spot, and then we go to another spot that ends up bleeding more. But it's
Oh
the whole thing.
gosh.
I will
Yeah.
say, like, I think I didn't, I mean, I knew what I was getting into, but I didn't realize I would have to do all that stuff.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. There's a lot
yeah.
of steps, it sounds like.
Hmm.
And I mean, even
Yeah.
when we had our conversation before, it just, I was surprised at all of the steps. And
Hmm.
especially, do you want to talk about like the embryos, the testing of the embryos and how many you guys got? And then what
Yeah.
it was like, boiled down to basically, because that was astonishing to me. I had no idea.
Yeah. Um, so with the egg retrieval,
Yeah.
we had, I think I had 19 viable eggs. I think I had 19 that they could test. And
Mm-hmm.
then, let's see here, and then 12 made it through. And then we had 8 genetically tested because, like, with what we were getting, that's what was included in what we basically were buying. Um,
Yeah.
and so we still have like another, it might be 12. No, it was 11, actually 11. So I had 11 good eggs. And then, so I still have 3 more that I can get tested if I wanted to, but I haven't. And so the other 8, we were able to genetically test. And then out of the 8 that we tested, that we had 5 of them, no, sorry, 3 of them were normal. And the
Okay.
thing is with that is like, when I explain, like, so 8 eggs, great. They, made it through basically round 2 of everything. But with 8 eggs, there was like certain things in each egg, like this mosaic was too high, and this was, about normal, but then this was like, I never fully understood it, but there's certain things that they look for
Yeah.
that could, because they're looking for basically any possible problems, anything that could be like any type of abnormality, and
Right.
with that abnormality can cause a miscarriage. So
Yeah.
through that, we had, out of the 8, 5 of them were not usable, 3 of them were normal. And through
Okay.
those 3 normal, we found out also through genetically tested them. So yes, it tests all these different things about them, like if they've got extra chromosomes and things like that. We also found out we have all 3 of the normal ones were girls. So we have all 3
Okay.
girls. So if
Yeah.
we want to do this again, get pregnant again, we have 2 more little girls if we want to get pregnant again.
Aw.
Yeah.
And those are, I just want to make sure, those are eggs or
Yes.
fertilized eggs?
So they're, yeah. So I should probably explain that because they're eggs,
Okay.
but they're also, so the Chris's sperm with my eggs. That's the difference between IVF and IUI, is like you become fertile, and then the sperm is injected for IUI. But with IVF, they have to do an egg retrieval, then basically put together the sperm and the egg. It's like I said, like in a dish, almost essentially, and then they wait. It's like around 6 days, and basically then the embryo then starts to form with it, and they wash the good sperm. So it's not only the eggs coming together with the sperm, it's also they basically, that's why it's more invasive with IVF and why it's so expensive, is because they put together the egg and the sperm, and it creates the embryo, and through that they wash all the good sperm. And so with Chris, he did get to a point which wasn't enough to be even for IUI, but good enough for IVF. But he's like, you're
Mm-hmm.
actually still have a lot of valuable sperm right now because you've been eating healthy, you lost weight, you've been exercising. This is the highest. He's like, this is the highest I've seen your sperm, because when we
Wow.
started, it was low, and then it
Uh-huh.
reversed, got even lower with the ACG injection. But then
Mm-hmm.
once he started doing all those other things naturally, it actually increased it to more than what he started with at the beginning. And so they're able to wash a good amount of good sperm and then put it together. And then that's how it created an embryo.
Okay. Gotcha.
So,
So you
yeah.
basically have 3 embryos. You have 2 more left. One
Yeah.
obviously
Well,
you're pregnant with now. Okay.
yeah, 2 more. Sorry. Yeah. We have I'm trying to think about, yeah, we have the one we just used. Yes, and then we have two more.
Okay. And then you have, I like can't remember all of the math. And then you have 3 or 4 other embryos that haven't been genetically tested. So if you
Yeah,
want to pay later to get those genetically
yeah.
tested, then you could. Okay.
Yeah, because like what's included when they do all of everything procedure, like how is it the package deal? So you get
Yeah.
8 included, and now if you want to test like the rest of them, which I had more, then
Mhm.
it's a little bit extra to test the other 3. So
Yeah. So with all of these steps, I could imagine and I've heard that this is very expensive.
yes,
So what was the cost of all of this and did your insurance help with any of it?
no, no. I'm sorry, I don't
Yeah.
mean to laugh, but I don't.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the things that they would maybe be able to pay for would be if I were to, any type of simple things. And it did
Mhm.
cover some like some stuff, but most of it was, yeah, like a lot of it was not covered. And it didn't matter what insurance you had, like it just a lot of it's not covered.
Yeah.
So we ended up spending between my procedure and then Chris's stuff and then everything all together is up to more than 20,000.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah,
Wow.
so mine was like 15, but then we also did other things and genetic tests. So it was basically 20,000 for me. And then with
Mhm.
Chris's was another like few thousand that we had with everything we did with him. So yeah,
Wow.
it can be very costly and it's obviously worth it, but it's not cheap and something like this, it's unfortunate because there's a lot of people that can't have kids out there, and a lot of people don't have the ability to um, pay for most of that. And
Mhm.
so it was nice that, we were able to get some things paid for, but, but then at the same time, we still had to pay a good chunk of it.
Right.
So yeah, it's not
Yeah.
cheap at all. So
No, that's crazy. And even just like the feelings and emotions you're already having with this and then to put like
yeah,
these huge bills on top of it, I think is just even more pressure and I hope
yeah.
it works and that's
And that's
just
another
crazy.
factor. You segue to a good point is that because it ended up being that it was on my husband's side versus me, like I was a good candidate for it, but then there's also a lot of women that on their side are not able to um are the ones that are not able to provide, be able to get pregnant versus like
Mhm.
a lot of times it is the female factor versus the male factor. And in our situation, it ended up being the male factor. So that most of the time it's not the case, and it usually ends up being the
Yeah.
female factor in a lot of ways. And going through that, and even if you do go through it and get to that point of doing everything, doing the egg retrieval, doing the embryo transfer, there's been a lot of failed times to do it.
Right.
I've heard of women, and then that's guess what? That's more money. So a
Mhm.
lot of women that go through this procedure, they don't. I mean, the percentage is not. It's not 100%, and a lot of times,
Mhm.
if you like, a lot of times, the first round could fail. There's a good chance that it could fail. And
Jeez.
we were in a good situation because of where I was at and what I was able to offer, but not everyone gets to have that opportunity.
Mhm.
So I would say anyone going through this, just make sure that you are mentally and emotionally are able to know that there's a chance that it could fail and know that you're able to take or withhold, like knowing that this could happen because it's not easy. And emotionally, it was not even easy for me to just go through this process, but knowing that if I failed, it would have been even so much harder for me to even continue. So
Right.
yeah, that's one of those things like that's unfortunate because like you spend all this money and it fails, and then you have to spend more money to try another round of it. And that's
Right.
the unfortunate part of IVF, is that there is a possibility of it failing the first time around.
Right. And people just don't have endless money, even though that's what you want to do. You want to use endless amounts
Mm-mm.
of money to do
No.
this, and you just can't do it.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned too that your husband worked for Abercrombie. He had something that helped pay for some of his procedure.
Yeah.
What was that? Because that might be helpful for people to know to kind of investigate into their companies that they work for too.
So if you he left for a few years. He had gone out. He worked for Abercrombie for a while, left and came back. So he was considered a new employee, even though he had worked there prior. And they had a new program that basically gives them it's like a debit card through a company
Mm-hmm.
called Carrot. And it basically, for anyone new to the company, start wanting to start a family, it gives them like $10,000 on a debit card to start that fertility treatment. So
That's amazing.
that's why we were able to do what we could do with Chris, for him to get tested, and even also pay for some of our procedure for IVF. We were able to use some of that money too. We still had to dip into our own funding to still, so we actually ran out. But it was really, really great to have that, because when we had that card, um, it was like a big, huge relief. But I don't know what other companies do that, but because they're such a big company
Yeah.
and they're very like they're very family oriented, they offer this program to all their new employees, which is nice. And actually, this year they decided to increase it. So it was 10,000, and now starting this year, they've increased it to 20,000
Oh my
for
gosh.
even.
Wow.
So we still get it if we wanted. Obviously, if we wanted to do this again with another
Yeah.
child, but also for anyone that does start working in the company, they actually get another 20,000, or not another, sorry, they get the set price of 20. So right now we get another 10,000 if we're deciding
Yeah.
to have another child. But with him, or with anyone else that is new to the company, now they have 20,000 on a carrot card. It's like a debit card, and they get to use it for fertility treatment. It is
Wow.
nice because of the fact that I've never heard this with like anyone, and it was like really
Mm-hmm.
kind of like perfect timing for
Yeah.
us, because he didn't go back until, let's see, when was this? He's been there for over a year now. So like it was like literally as we were starting to do fertility treatment or started talking about it, that he found out about this. So it was kind of really, it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because we're like,
Yeah.
how are we going to afford if we have to do anything? We weren't even thinking IVF at the time when we found out about it, about
Mm-hmm.
the card and everything. But he was like, I'm like, well, if we do have any struggles, like at least we have this to, fall back on. But didn't know future wise, once we did go full head, into this, that it would really help us, with everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think too, so many people work for companies and they're not aware of all these benefits either. So even just
Hmm.
getting the word out of like talking to your human resource person and just asking the questions like, do you cover any type of healthcare stuff or IVF? Or I know a
Yeah,
lot of companies too help with like adoption assistance, or you can have like adoption leave whenever you
yeah,
adopt a child. So
yeah,
that is amazing. Did you guys
yeah. It's pretty
have
cool.
any type of like backup plan if this didn't work, or you did multiple rounds and it didn't work?
We did talk about adoption and fostering if it didn't work. We both
Okay.
obviously had been saying, like, knowing that I love, I love kids, and I wanted to have a, child myself.
Yeah.
And knowing that, and he also wanted to have a kid, like knowing that there are a lot of kids that don't have either, a home or anything like that. So we were thinking about, fostering and adoption, if like obviously if this did fail. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have that in the back of their mind, just kind of preparing and mentally preparing yourself for things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what were
So
some
hard.
of the positives and negatives specifically relating to healthcare that you had gone through? I know you had mentioned too that just even some of the things people say to you are just like off putting whenever you're trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where it had been said like, oh, like we were in the middle of about to go through the second part of our journey,
Mm-hmm.
and it had been mentioned that it was like, oh, you should just try to go natural, like you are at the point of like, oh, it looks like you could try to go like do it naturally, and I'm like, and she knew the background of both us, like
Right.
me, yes, not impossible with me, but still struggle, near to
Right.
impossible with my husband. And I was like, yeah, I get miracles can happen, but like, I mean, it was insensitive. I didn't like it at the time, and it made me feel like, um, I don't know how to put it. Like, I knew that it was not meant in a, like, how do I put it? I knew it wasn't like I just think it was insensitive. I don't think,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, you work in this environment of women and, trying to get pregnant, maybe like just think about what you are saying in the particular moment, like knowing that if you know someone's medical background and you know what they're going through, maybe not saying that because you know that probably is not likely.
Right. No,
And
that's
so,
completely understandable, I think.
yeah. And I think because she knew I was waiting in the process of wanting to get pregnant, and we were in that between the egg retrieval and now waiting, we're like sitting ducks of like, okay, Leanne needs to become fertile myrtle. My uterine lining needs to be perfect, this and that. And I need to
Right.
start my period. All the things they prefer it to be natural, because then if they force it, it could backfire. So they want to make sure that everything's more natural, which I get that
Mm-hmm.
part. But then when I missed my window of things moving forward in order for us to go to the embryo transfer, it was like, I have to wait even longer now because I missed my window of them being able to start the procedure or even do anything. But it ended up working in my favor because after I was kind of upset about, that being said and moving forward with everything, it actually ended up being that day when I found out the test came back, and I found that after looking at my uterus, that it found out that my uterus lining was in great condition, like the thickest heat, like that the doctor had seen, and that it was actually perfect for starting to get the ball rolling for the embryo transfer. So even though
Yeah.
I was upset thinking I missed my window, and then being told like, oh, you just try naturally, but then it ended up being like, oh, the uterus lining is the like the thickest I've seen you in this entire time that you've been coming here, and it's actually probably prime for us to like start the process of you doing the embryo transfer. So that's when I started the progesterone and did everything. It was literally like bam, bam, bam. So as soon as
Oh, that's
it was just a
awesome.
normal checkup. It was just a normal checkup, and not realizing that would be the next few days, realizing that would be the starting point of us starting the process of IVF. So, or sorry,
Yeah.
of embryo transfer, and then yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a silver lining. I will say that it was a silver lining because even though I was told that, but then next moments I was like, oh wait, no, you are actually in good condition to start this. So
Right. It brought up a
yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
Yes.
And once those, like, once they looked at my uterus and the blood work, and realizing that even though I missed my window of like starting a cycle and ovulating, and that's what the problem was, it ended up being that they could still see a thick lining in my uterus. And then I was able to, and that's why they were able to kind of force it, but also be able to start the process. So I really thought that
Yeah.
day, I was like, when she told me that, like, I was like, oh man, like, I missed my next window. And like, now we have to wait longer to get pregnant. But it actually worked out in the end because we were able to do that. So
Right. And not to mention, too, the reason it was kind of like a mystery sometimes was because of your PCOS, right? That they're so irregular that
yeah,
they couldn't really like go with your cycle because you don't have a regular cycle.
and that's why it's like I remember when I started the process of even like wanting to just naturally get pregnant, I would be testing my urine for like it's an ovulation strip to see when you're
Uh-huh.
ovulating, and it never was in like a color that I wanted, and it was always kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And then I remember my doctor telling me like stop doing that because it's not going to be accurate for you because
Mm,
your estrogen levels and everything about like with this, even though mine wasn't like extremely bad, but it was just not going to be accurate.
yeah.
And so I just remember when I did that, I was like, made sense because like now looking back at it, like I wasted trying to pee on a strip to see if I was like, oh, am I ovulating? Is there time for me to, for us to try again in that short little
Hmm.
window that I have? And but that's yeah, exactly. That's why I couldn't. They couldn't be like, oh, like maybe now, but no, because it like you said, it was all over the place, so it was kind of unpredictable of when I would, and so.
Right. And I wanted to circle back around too to your husband. I think that that's amazing for other men to know that might struggle
Mhm.
with the same thing is that, he went through 2 rounds of this like expensive medication. And
Mhm.
sometimes it can just be as simple as like a lifestyle change, eating healthier, working out, or whatever. And that might not be true for everybody. But I
Yeah.
feel like that's just good information for people to know. Because if one person doesn't tell them,
Yeah.
they just might not ever know. So I think that's
Yeah.
pretty amazing too.
And a lot of times, like the unfortunate thing about the medication he was on, it does work for a lot of men.
Yeah.
The doctor was like, I've never seen this in the 8 years I've been a doctor. He's like, I've never seen this happen. He's
Yeah.
like, it's usually not likely. It's very actually rare for it to backfire or it to reverse. But in the case it could happen, yes, like he said, let's try this route. Let's, try to lose weight, eat healthy, exercise, do all those things that are natural and go from there, which, like I said, it didn't give us the per se end result that we wanted, but it also gave us a
Hmm.
better result than what we started with. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep.
That's awesome. So you mentioned, I think at the beginning of the podcast, that you're 30 weeks pregnant. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. So when is your
Yeah.
due date?
April 11th, but I don't think I'm going to make it to April 11th. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, technically, if I go all the way, but I feel like if she's anything, if I'm anything, actually, like my mom was a week early with me and 2 weeks early with my
Yeah.
brother. Like, I don't think she'll go all the way. I think that I'm predicting end of March, beginning of April. I think that she'll probably go maybe 38, 39,
Okay.
possibly 40 weeks, but I just I don't see myself like really going past the 40. So,
Right. Yes. I know. It's like, I think pregnant women all are thinking the same thing. It's like, you want your baby to be
yeah.
healthy and you want to get
Yeah.
to term, but you're also just like, I want to go at the soonest possible time that my baby's healthy because I'm
Hmm.
sick of being pregnant at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I always joke around that it feels like the first and second trimester for a lot of pregnant women seem to go by fast. And I didn't even experience, I'm like, oh, it went by really fast. But then
Yeah.
the third trimester, I always notice, like, because I've been around a lot of pregnant women, the third trimester
Yeah.
feels like 5 years. It feels like it's a lot longer than the other two, and it feels like you're pregnant
Mhm.
forever in the last trimester. So, yeah, I definitely feel that, and I'm like, I'm only feel like I'm in the beginning of this trimester, but which I am only a couple weeks in the
Yeah.
third, but I'm like, oh my goodness, I cannot imagine, cannot
Right.
imagine. But hey, I'll get through it, and I am
Yes.
here.
Yeah, and I
So,
should have asked you this earlier, and I think I meant to ask you this. How old are you right now?
I'm 36.
36. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Just for all the other listeners out there, because I think people always wonder too,
Yeah.
like how old people are when they're pregnant. And I think, especially right now, there's such varying ages for sure. Like,
Yeah.
I know,
For
I
sure.
think one of the most recent pregnancies, there was like a famous person, was Cameron Diaz. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw that, but I think she like close to 50 or
I
something
think
like that. It
so.
was,
Like I said,
yeah.
like modern medicine these days and the right help, like I mean, a
Hmm.
lot of people are getting pregnant later and later. I mean, and then like, yeah, there are risk factors and things like that, but it's not impossible. For us,
Right.
it was like, yeah, I was 34, almost 35, and then, going on, now I just, turned 36 and like knowing this, I'm like, okay, it is possible. And
Hmm.
yes, it's, like I said, there are risk factors, but it is manageable and possible these days. So
Yeah. I've been seeing too that there's just been studies saying that if you have a baby later in life, it actually helps increase like your age, like your lifespan. And
really,
I think it's true too for women and men. Like
huh,
even if the man is older and they have a baby, yeah, you
yeah,
live longer. So I
kind
feel
of get
like
it gives you that
that's amazing.
longevity, that youthful, like it's kind of like the
Right.
gives you that extra 10 years. Yeah, I mean, I could see that because even though kids and everything like that can be stressful, but like it also brings about like you're just like on top of it, and it's also like
Right.
just
Keeps you active.
mentally, it keeps you active and like
Yes.
I do see that. I can see that definitely.
I know. I'm not going to say you will look good because I have like all these gray hairs. I've got so many like wrinkles popping up from having
Yeah.
3 kids. But I mean, I might live a long time. I just won't look good
Yeah.
doing it, I guess.
That's true. That's true. I mean, like you look good, but I know I get the feeling. You may look good on the outside, but you're feeling like you're like 85 on the
Yes.
inside, but that's okay. It's
Yes.
fine.
That
So
is
yeah.
exactly right. So, how have your ultrasounds been? How has your health been throughout this pregnancy? Has everything
Yeah.
been looking good?
Well, I actually had, and I'll say start this out, but I actually had a pretty easy first and second, first half of second trimester, but ended up being that in December I got walking pneumonia, and that was unfortunate because I was like, so excited and happy that we had pretty good like pregnancy so far. I didn't get morning sickness. I didn't get any of that stuff, which
Yeah.
not always the case. Not, I know other people that have gone through IVF that have had all the obviously normal symptoms that anyone that had naturally gotten pregnant. And so unfortunately, I got pneumonia and it's been a struggle. I'm still like, I have remnants of it in my body. I'm just now getting over it. Um, and yeah, it's been a struggle. And,
Yeah.
but other than that, like health wise, I mean, pneumonia is the only thing that I really, really struggled with. And like I said, it's going on almost 2 months, and I'm just now feeling like
Wow.
back to like myself. But
Yeah.
you gotta think you're sharing your immune system with your baby,
Right.
and the other factor is like, you know, you're sharing your immune system with your baby, and you're sick, so most of that goes to her, or like hit her, him, and then so like every time like you think about it, you're then getting better. So you give your
Hmm.
immune system to her, half of it, and then the other half of you is trying to get better. And then what's left of you is basically depleted, and you don't
Right.
have anything left. And it's very exhausting because like you're growing a human and you're giving all of your energy and your health, to this
Hmm.
baby, and it's like it definitely makes things 10 times harder. Like when I've been sick before, I've never actually had pneumonia, but when I've had similar sicknesses, it's like, it's fine. I can take this and, yeah, it sucks, but I'll be better soon. And but with this, it's like takes a lot longer, 2 times longer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what my doctor was saying. She's like, it takes 2 times longer to get better. Everything is just way more exhausting, and it's unfortunate, but obviously it's worth it. But like there's just not a lot you can really take that's strong to get better. So other than that, like,
Right.
yeah, it's kind of one of those things that felt a little discouraging because it's like, how am I ever going to get better? Because I didn't feel like I was going to get better. But here I am, finally there. She's fine. Her ultrasounds have been
Good.
fine. They said that her heart really strong. She's right on par with measurement. Oh, she's moving right now. She knows I'm talking about her. Um,
Aw.
but yeah, everything's been basically right on spot with everything. Her test for her anatomy scan went well.
Oh, good.
She like passed with flying colors, nothing wrong. And then everything along the way, she's like, and when I got sick, she was fine. I was the one over
Yeah.
here suffering, and she was okay though. So yeah,
She's nice and safe in your uterus. That's
she's
good.
safe.
That's
So
awesome. Oh, well, that's
yeah,
good to hear. I'm happy you're healthy. I'm happy you're feeling better after
yeah,
that little pneumonia thing. And yeah, I mean, it's hard because there's a list of things that you take when you're not pregnant, that
yeah,
you like are your go-to items like ibuprofen, allergy medicine, things like that. And then it's
yep,
like you can't take any of those when you're
yep,
pregnant. So that's
nope.
also difficult. You kind of have to like suffer through some of those things until
I've
you're done being pregnant.
I've basically have figured out and mastered the things that are natural that can help. Like, oh, you can do warm, like hot, or probably more like warm water and honey or tea, and like things that
Mhm.
like I had gargled salt water to help with any like bacteria. I did literally everything. I was like, well, if I can't take certain medicines, I'm going to try my best to figure out what I can do. And so,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely not easy.
Yes.
So,
So, how has this journey impacted your feelings during your pregnancy? Has it put any more? I think all pregnant women kind of feel pressure as, like, I need to keep this baby safe, healthy, all these things.
mhm.
So, how has this, complicated journey kind of
Mhm.
changed your emotions?
Um, I feel like in a lot of ways, I think going into it, I was thinking that the struggle or the um, kind of the roadblock would be emotionally would be just getting there, just getting pregnant. But
Hmm.
I think honestly, if I'm being honest, like it's been all through my pregnancy. It's like there's certain points where you're like stressed just getting pregnant. And even going to that point, I mean, it was a lot to get that point. And then when
Right.
you're pregnant, you're like worried within that first trimester of like, what if something goes wrong? Even though
Hmm.
good chance not because of what we went through. And but then like all these things, these thoughts, these very strong feelings and anxious thoughts come in your mind of like, oh, what's this, why am I feeling this, or what the things that could go wrong within that. And you get to the next like round two, and you get further into your pregnancy, and all you're thinking about is like, oh, am I feeling them enough? Are they kicking enough? And even before that, or within a genetic test, when I did genetic, or not the genetic test, or the anatomy test, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what if they find something wrong with her heart or with something?
Right.
And like, so like the anxiety and the emotion doesn't just stop at getting pregnant. It
Hmm.
continues into it's still even now, like continuing into my entire pregnancy. And even then, you say you have a beautiful and amazing, pregnant or birth, and then it doesn't stop there. Then you're like worrying about them
Right.
getting to the first year, and then
Yeah.
even my sister-in-law said something that I thought was interesting and like so true. Is like she's like, so my niece and nephew are 6 and 9,
Yeah.
and she's like, even to this day, I, open their door put my head in,
Yeah.
and she's like, I checked it to see if they're breathing. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't stop. Like, you never stop being a mom, or never stop being, worrisome or anxious, or, the emotion never stops. But I mean,
Right.
like I said, it is worth it, but it's one of those things that my advice would be the counseling and the what you invest in when it comes to how you're going to get through it is important, because
Mhm.
like I said, it doesn't just stop at getting pregnant. It's all the other things that you worry about along the way and even afterwards. So my advice
Right.
with that is to really seek, someone that either has gone through something similar that you've gone through, or
Mhm.
just to be able to know, like, be able to relate and be able to talk you through things, because it's not easy. Like, I don't know, like, for me, like, I talk to people, but like, I don't know how people can do it alone. Like, it's something that's not meant to be done by yourself. And that I
Yeah.
think I highly recommend from the beginning, and even afterwards, is just check on your mental health. Check on, everything that you're going through with someone, because it's not easy. Because I mean, you have all these hormones
Yeah.
just flooding into your body, and I don't think a lot of things that the outside, someone that hasn't been pregnant, or obviously isn't, not saying just like men, but that are not pregnant, don't realize that there's a lot of factors that people don't think about when it comes to not just, even if you go through like an IUI or IVF journey, but getting pregnant in general,
Right.
getting to that point in general. Like, some people like struggle, and they can't for like financially afford to get to that, so they try naturally for like 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 years to get pregnant. So I
Yeah.
think that it's important, emotionally and mentally, to have someone to talk to along the way, because it, like I said, until I went through it, because I had seen multiple friends of mine get pregnant and seen what they've gone through, but I had never emotionally and mentally gone through it, knowing what I was up against.
Yeah.
And so that is my advice when it comes to going through, especially if you've been struggling to get pregnant, to have someone that is kind of there to support you, and not just like, yeah, agree with you. Someone that
Mhm.
is either gone through it, or knows that, or gone through the struggle, or has been pregnant, because
Right.
like I said, it's not easy, and it's like, just there's no good way of putting it, but it's not easy to go through. Obviously rewarding and amazing, but it's not easy to go through by yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that's my biggest recommendation, is to have someone to talk to you about it and not go through it by yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like you answered my last question. I was going to ask what you would say to other women or couples who are currently going through the same thing. So, yeah,
Yeah.
if there's
Have a good
anything else you
support
want to
system.
mention,
That's
okay.
key, to have a good support system. So,
Yes. And it's so easy too to forget, like, and you might experience this too. It's like once you have your baby, you like almost instantly forget what it was like to be pregnant.
yeah,
And
I've
so,
heard that. It's like you almost have like amnesia, right? Like, I've heard this, and
yes.
that's why like it's so funny to me when like you're going through, like, oh my gosh, this is the worst, I don't like it. But
Yeah.
then women will do it over again. I'm like, you went through the worst pregnancy, or the worst,
Yes.
like, having, like, your baby, it's so painful. But then, like, something, I know it's a chemical that basically, you're meant to be able to have, kids. That's something that
Right.
just kind of a switch. And like, and then after you have the baby, you do really forget about it. I've heard this so many times, that you have
Yes.
your baby and you forget everything that you went through. Like, because I don't think
Yeah.
we're meant to remember the things that you go through when you have a baby. And I can't even imagine remembering like anything that my sister-in-law went through with both my niece and nephew. Like,
Yeah.
but she did, she forgot. And she had my nephew, and then she had my niece. Like, it's so funny how nature works, because like if we
Right.
remembered everything that we went through, we probably wouldn't be having more than one child.
Oh,
So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Well, even
but
just like babies, toddlers, elementary school, like I'll talk to some of my friends who have like young toddlers and like I forget what it's like, but like I listen
mhm.
to them, I'm like, oh my gosh, it sounds so difficult.
Yeah,
But I really can't like bring up that feeling of how it was difficult. And I think
yeah,
it's just love, like we
yeah,
just love our kids so much. And you're just like,
yeah.
I want to make more of those because they're so cute and I love
They're so
them.
cute, and then you don't realize then all the stress that goes along with it. But then you're like, but they're so cute. I know I've heard my
I
sister-in-law
know.
say that before, and it's like she's like after she went through a struggle actually with my niece, but with my
Yeah.
nephew, it was the easiest pregnancy. She said if Izzy were like, that's
Aw.
my niece's name, if Izzy were like Mason, she's like I would have had 20 babies. But she
Yes.
did go through more of a struggle with my niece and ended up actually having blood clots because of it, and that's why she's
Oh
not
my
having
gosh.
another. Yeah, it was scary.
Yes.
But like you said, like different every pregnancy is different every time, and so
Yeah.
and I think that either we talked, I remember talking about this today, is that you either love it or you hate it. Like it's one of those things when it comes to pregnancy,
Yes.
but birth, obviously, we forget about that. But,
Yeah.
pregnancy in general is like you either love or you hate it. And, it's not meant for everyone, but if you do, go through it and, it's definitely worth it. And, so
Absolutely. Okay, well, I have one more question for you.
yeah,
Some people share names of their babies, some people don't. Do you guys have a
yeah,
name for your little girl?
we do. Her name is going to be
Yeah.
Adeline.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yes.
I love
So
it.
it's going to be Adeline. Her middle name is going to be Louise, because my
Oh,
mom's middle name is actually Louise. So it's going to be
okay.
Adeline Louise. And then there's going to be a second middle name because, so my husband's sister passed away a few years ago, suddenly. And so we
I'm
decided that
sorry.
if we would have a girl, well, thank you. If we had a little girl, that we would name her, have her name in the middle, which is Jennifer.
Okay.
So she'll be Adeline Louise Jennifer Lee.
Oh,
Very
that's
long name, but
adorable.
we wanted to honor
Yeah.
her in some way. So yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think, a lot of people are going through the same journey that you guys are on. So I appreciate you being open and honest. And I just hope everything goes well and
Thank
can't wait to
you.
see that little girl.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're
We're
welcome.
super
Bye,
excited.
everybody. Yes,
Bye.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
If you have a healthcare story you'd like to share and would like to be our next guest on our podcast, head on over to our website, www.LahSET.com. That's www.lahset.com, or you can email us at info@lahset.com. Thanks for listening, everybody.